All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Isaac Wood. I'm going to be discussing as we go along the celiac disease and what it is. My volunteer has been struggling with this for just about all of her life now, diagnosed at a young age, and is now kind of living with it pretty permanently. And I was able to learn a lot from her, so I hope that you're able to learn something as well. So, first, I want to kind of make things a little bit clearer and talk about where we are in the body. So, food is ingested, goes down through the cardiac sphincter, through the stomach, through the pyloric sphincter, and the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. It's kind of the main point of where celiac disease is taking place. It's in the small intestine, is where we're looking at. And so the small intestine is very important in digestion and absorption. It's about 90% of digestion happens in the small intestine. So it's very important. If the small intestine is thrown off, it really takes a toll on how our bodies absorb the nutrients that we are eating. And also structure of small intestine, you can kind of think of it as a sausage, but with on the casing of the sausage, there's these finger-like projections, okay? And these finger-like projections are called villi. There's tons of them in the small intestine. They increase surface area, and this is where most of the absorption and digestion kind of takes place. It's by these villi, and we'll get into a little bit later as to how that relates to celiac disease. With it being a disease, it is an autoimmune disease. Just want to define that real quick. An autoimmune disease is when our immune system attacks healthy living and working cells. That's what's going on kind of in this. We'll get into it a little bit later. First, let's talk about the prevalence. So celiac disease kind of is gaining more steam in the public eye, but it's only still about 0.5 to 1% of the population of the world, those that struggle with celiac disease. It's a little bit higher in the US and in Europe, being 1 in 8. This could be due to a lack of testing kind of worldwide with celiac disease, and that being it's pretty hard to test as well. So females, a little fun fact for you, are 2 times more likely to have celiac disease than males, and only 30% of celiac diseases are properly diagnosed. This is the hard part of celiac disease. There's a lot of overlap between a non-celiac gluten sensitivity, the gluten sensitivity is what we always say, or a wheat allergy. I've included this picture over here that shows symptoms of both celiac disease and gluten intolerance. You find a lot of overlaps. So you can see that there's anxiety, depression over here, okay? You can see that there's bloating, cramping over here, bloating, and then we have some abdominal pain, ingestion, kind of it's very similar again here, but there's some key differences in celiac patients versus the just struggling with gluten intolerance. First one being the hair loss, headache, tiredness, a little bit of gluten intolerance gets some of that. Tooth enamel problems is a big one, distinguishing factor, as well as bone density. Is another distinguishing factor, skin rash, and then even some weight loss and fertility issues that we see with celiac disease patients specifically. So that being said, it's very hard to diagnose because there's a lot of overlap between those that are struggling with gluten intolerance, wheat allergies, and the celiac disease. So let's get into what it is. So back into the small intestine is where we are, and an autoimmune disease again is when our body's immune system kind of turns on itself and kills healthy cells. So these healthy cells that we're looking here is villi. These villi in the small intestine line the whole way around this long tube that help with absorption and digestion. The finger-like projections when they are normal. Here's a good picture that shows that. When someone has celiac disease, the immune system that we have kind of cuts these finger-like projections off into these little nubs. You can obviously tell that there's a decreased surface area because of that destruction of cells. And this damage of This damage of these villi, these cells, cause inflammation in the small intestine when gluten is ingested because they cannot break it down and absorb the nutrients in the body. Just to highlight a little bit of what gluten is, um, it's very important in our Western diet. I'm pretty sure we've all heard about it. There's bread, pasta, wheat, rye, barley, some oats, many things. Anything that kind of has that bready kind of texture and flavor most likely has gluten in it. Flour, big one as well. Okay. So we need to know the metabolic impacts. First being that they're not able to eat most grains. Um, that again is wheat, rye, barley, most oats. Because if they do, they are in a lot of pain. And the lack of grains that's ingested usually leads to a lack of carbohydrates in their diet. It's very important. Most of these people also do not eat enough calories, being that a lot of these calories in the normal Western diet comes from carbohydrates. In the grains the lack of grains leads to a lack of carbohydrates in their diet. Also, another metabolic impact is that they have an increased likelihood of getting something called metabolic syndrome. This pretty much means that the body isn't able to metabolize other things as well. This increases blood pressure, increases blood sugar, kind of causes a lot more issues down the road if it's continued. Another one that there's an increased likelihood of hepatic stenosis. And what that is it's pretty much a fatty liver. You can kind of draw the lines that's not a good thing to have. It's excess fat deposits kind of surrounding your liver, inhibiting the liver's function. Okay, so the general health recommendations for those that have celiac disease is that we want them to be totally gluten-free. And I talked a lot with my volunteer about this, and she wants to be gluten-free. It's important to note that this is something that's very painful to them and causes a lot of trouble, a lot of kind of hardships in their life. So they choose, and doctors recommend cut out gluten. It makes you feel terrible. So they do. The next health recommendation is that some vitamins and other micronutrients are at deficiencies. So supplements are suggested with the help of a healthcare provider. Some of the secondary ones that are listed is fiber, iron, zinc, folate, niacin, riboflavin, vitamin B12, and vitamin D. And the key big hitter in this case is calcium. Those that have trouble with celiac disease have trouble absorbing calcium and ingesting calcium in their diet. This inhibits bone health and bone growth. Therefore, many doctors, whenever they diagnose somebody with celiac disease, they do some bone density tests just to make sure that the bone health is looking good and is checking out. And then the last general health recommendation is that you need to get enough calories. Those that struggle with celiac disease, mostly female again, and usually thin, you noticed a little bit of thinness in a lot of those that struggle with this disease. This can be due to a lot of the lack of calories in their diet, being that they're not able to ingest the the calorie dense foods that we all eat, the donuts, everything like the breads, all of that stuff is very nutrient dense, very calorie dense, not necessarily nutrient dense. And they're not able to get that. So they get full rather quickly and they just live their life getting fewer calories than necessary. So as a global perspective, touched a little bit on it before, but the United States, about 1% of the population has celiac disease. That being said, most celiacs go undetected, being that testing is not a huge thing and that the symptoms are very similar to other diseases and issues. And the one thing that is to note in the US at least, that we are looking forward to help future generations with these problems by rapidly advancing the food industry. If you've been to Walmart, the gluten-free section is always growing, and that's a good thing. That helps out these people a lot. It's important, and it would be important in Finland. In Finland, about 2.4% of the population have celiac disease, which is the highest in the world that's recorded. Um, and that might be due to more testing, more testing happening. Um, Being that celiac disease is hereditary in nature, it's pretty easy to test once we have kind of a basis, and that will perpetuate throughout all generations as you go down the line, kind of hereditarily. Okay. So in what my volunteer had to offer, so she gave um, her her dietary her diet over two days, and then this bar graph report shows the average over those 2 days. And I want to point out a couple of key factors, starting with the good stuff. That protein really good. She's getting enough protein. Fat, yeah, pretty good. Total sugars and added sugars super low. This is pretty common in celiac patients. But what is important to know is carbohydrates is low, and most importantly, calories are very low. She's not getting enough. She is trying to lose a little bit of weight. She's very active, but the calories were quite low for my liking. So jumping into the My Plate report now. Again, starting with the good protein, really good. Great job on the protein. Fruits based on the calories that she was ingesting. The fruit to calorie ratio, I guess, pretty good. Pretty good. Vegetables could need some work, and dairy could use some work. But again, I want to point you to the grain intake being low. This is because there simply are not too many grains out there that they can eat. So I made 2 SMART goals for my volunteer here. The first SMART goal is that I want her to consistently eat 1,750 calories a day for the next 2 weeks. It's specific, being that it's a specific number, it's measurable. She uses MyFitnessPal daily, and it's achievable. It's not necessarily where I want her to be, but it's a good starting point of where she is now versus where we can get in the future. It's relevant because she needs the calories to supply her body with enough nutrients, and I want to see it for 2 weeks. Hopefully, this will instill a habit in her, and for me and us to be able to see, are there any changes in her lifestyle and in her energy throughout the day. Second SMART goal is that I want her to schedule a consultation with her doctor about supplements, and I want that to happen in next week. Specific, we need to know what she's lacking, and I don't feel like the 2-day dietary analysis quite gave us what micronutrients she was lacking. It's very measurable. We just need a consultation set up, and I feel like she's lacking in a couple micronutrients, but we need to go through a doctor for that. And I want to thank everybody for listening and paying attention and learning with me about my volunteer and what her day-to-day looks like. Thanks so much, and I hope y'all learned a lot.